Have you ever noticed how, after turning 70, visits with friends and family don't feel quite the same? Maybe you find yourself saying, "I just don't feel like going anymore." And that feeling isn't about bitterness or loneliness. It's something deeper, a quiet shift inside you, a new kind of wisdom that gently guides how you choose to spend your time and energy. Many people don't talk about this, but stepping back from social visits isn't about giving up. It's about finding peace and clarity in your own company. As we age, we begin to understand that not every conversation or visit fills our hearts. Some leave us drained and exhausted instead. It's not selfish to protect yourself emotionally or physically. It's necessary. This new awareness helps us honor what truly matters and lets us say no without guilt to the things that no longer serve us. In this video, we'll explore 6 powerful reasons why so many people over 70 stop visiting others as often, and why that choice can be a beautiful act of self-care and respect. If you've ever felt this way, you're far from alone, and you're not wrong. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Reason 1. Emotional boundaries. As the years quietly accumulate, there's a subtle transformation that unfolds within us, one that many people never expect, and even fewer discuss openly. After 70, there's a wisdom that gently settles in our hearts, whispering truths we may have spent a lifetime ignoring. It isn't just our bodies that change as we age, but the way we relate to the world, to others, and perhaps most importantly, to ourselves. For decades, many of us spent our lives in motion, raising children, building careers, attending neighborhood barbecues, and showing up for birthdays, weddings, and holidays, no matter how we truly felt. The calendar was always full, our doors were open, and we poured our energy into every relationship, believing that was what made life meaningful. Being there for others was not just a duty, but an expectation we carried, sometimes so quietly it never felt like a choice. But somewhere along the way, often after we passed that 70th birthday, sometimes even before, a small but profound realization dawns. Not every gathering, every conversation, or every visit leaves us feeling whole. Some of these encounters leave us emptier than when we arrived. The faces are familiar, the conversations routine, but instead of feeling uplifted, we leave carrying a weight that is hard to shake. Maybe it starts at the end of a Sunday dinner, when you find yourself drained rather than refreshed. Or perhaps you notice how, after a holiday spent with extended family, it takes you days to recover, not just from the activity but from the emotional aftermath. You listen to stories you've heard 1,000 times before. You nod politely as others relive old grievances, air their complaints, or share worries you cannot solve. Sometimes, you catch yourself feeling invisible, as if you're merely there to keep the peace or fill a seat at the table. It's in these moments that the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Your emotional energy is not infinite. It's become more precious than ever. There is a cost to every interaction, and not all of them are worth the price. This is where the gift of emotional boundaries begins to bloom. It might seem like a simple idea, but for those of us raised in an era when putting others first was considered a virtue, it feels revolutionary. Emotional boundaries are not about building walls or shutting people out. They are about finally recognizing that your feelings, your peace of mind, and your emotional well-being matter just as much as anyone else's. Perhaps more, now that you know how quickly time can slip away. You start to notice the people who only call when they need a favor, or who seem to thrive on drama and conflict. You recognize the subtle exhaustion that follows time spent with those who never ask how you are, or who never really listen when you do share. For years, maybe you told yourself it was your job to keep the family together, to be the one everyone could rely on. You learned to swallow your feelings, to bite your tongue, to show up even when your heart wasn't in it. And for a long time, that worked. But there comes a turning point, a day when you wake up and realize you simply cannot give what you don't have. You are no longer willing to sacrifice your serenity for someone else's comfort, or to keep up appearances at the expense of your soul. Take Paul, for example, a man who just turned 82. For most of his adult life, Paul spent every other Sunday at his brother's house. At first, these visits were enjoyable, a chance to reminisce, share a meal, and laugh about childhood memories. But as the years wore on, something shifted. Conversations grew tense. Old family wounds resurfaced again and again. Political arguments flared up out of nowhere. Paul would drive home feeling anxious, replaying the same tired conflicts in his mind, needing hours to calm his nerves. The joy that once filled those Sundays had evaporated, replaced by an undercurrent of dread he struggled to ignore. One afternoon, after yet another argument left him feeling defeated, Paul made a quiet, momentous decision. He simply stopped going. He didn't announce it, didn't create a scene. He just let go. When his brother called to ask why, Paul answered honestly for the first time in years, "I need some peace." His brother didn't understand, but for the first time in decades, Paul did. This is not a story about giving up on people. It's about understanding the limits of your own heart. Emotional boundaries are a kind of wisdom earned only through experience. They teach us that it's not selfish to guard your spirit, but necessary for survival, especially as the years pass and our energy becomes more precious. You start to realize that not every invitation must be accepted, and not every phone call needs to be returned. You recognize the difference between being wanted and being expected, and how often those lines are blurred. When someone looks distracted while you speak, or checks their phone repeatedly during your visit, it becomes clear you're there out of habit, not out of genuine connection. So you begin to honor yourself in small but powerful ways. Maybe you limit your visits to only those who bring you comfort and joy. Maybe you set time limits, choosing to leave before exhaustion sets in. You learn to say, "No, thank you," without feeling guilty, and to decline invitations that don't align with your spirit. You begin to nurture relationships that feel mutual, where love, kindness, and care flow in both directions. Sometimes, this shift surprises those around you. Friends or family may ask why you're pulling away, or assume you're unwell. But deep down, you know the truth. You're protecting the gentle, sacred space within you. And that is an act of great courage. You wouldn't walk 5 miles on a twisted ankle. So why walk into conversations that twist your heart? You wouldn't keep running on an empty tank. So why keep pouring out your emotions to those who never fill you back up? Emotional boundaries are not about isolation, but about choosing your company and your peace wisely. As you settle into this new rhythm, you may find your world grows quieter, but it also grows deeper. The people who remain are those who value you, who cherish your presence, who lift you instead of wearing you down. The time you once spent trying to please everyone is now invested in your healing, hobbies, or moments of genuine connection. And for perhaps the first time in your life, you discover how truly restful it feels to be surrounded only by warmth. This is not the loneliness that so many fear in old age. It's the liberation that comes with finally respecting your own needs, after a lifetime of placing them last. It's the gentle strength to say, "I matter too." So, if you find yourself saying no more often, or choosing solitude over another exhausting visit, trust that inner wisdom. Emotional boundaries are a gift you give yourself, a sign not of withdrawal, but of self-respect. And that, more than anything, is what allows us to age with dignity, grace, and true peace. Reason 2. Time revaluation. Some truths don't reveal themselves until the pace of life finally slows, and you have the space to look at what you've truly been given. One of those truths is about time. Not the ordinary ticking of the clock or the way days can sometimes blur into each other, but the real, raw value of the moments left to you. It is only with age, often after 70, that you begin to feel the weight and wonder of time as if for the first time. You notice it on a quiet morning, coffee in hand, when the sun comes through your window a little softer than you remember. There's a hush in the house, not empty, but peaceful, as if the world itself is taking a long breath. It's in these moments that you realize how you no longer want to rush, feel the need to fill every hour with appointments and obligations. Suddenly, time feels like a rare jewel, not something to be spent carelessly or traded away out of habit or expectation. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. When you were younger, it was easy to believe that time was an endless resource. You gave it away to family gatherings, school events, work meetings, and neighborhood barbecues, trusting there would always be more. More birthdays, more holidays, more sunny afternoons to do the things you truly loved. You sat through conversations that didn't interest you, ran errands for people who barely said thank you, drove miles to visit out of a sense of duty. All the while, you tucked your dreams and desires onto a mental shelf, thinking, "I'll have time for that later." But with age comes a change in perspective, a gentle, sometimes startling revaluation of what time means. As the calendar pages turn, each hour, each morning, each walk in the park takes on a new, shining significance. You begin to realize, sometimes with joy and sometimes with a pang of regret, that not every invitation needs to be accepted, not every relationship needs to be maintained, and not every day needs to be lived for someone else's benefit. Take Lorraine, for example, a soft-spoken woman of 76 who spent more than 30 years driving 3 hours each way to visit her cousin in another town. At first, these visits were filled with laughter and connection, old family stories and familiar routines. But as the years passed, the sparkle began to fade. The visits became more about obligation than joy. The conversations repeated themselves, the television always seemed to be on, and Lorraine found herself watching the clock, thinking of all the things she'd rather be doing. One crisp autumn morning, sitting by the lake near her house with her sketch pad, she realized she hadn't felt so alive or so peaceful in years. That was the moment she decided to spend her precious time differently, not out of resentment, but out of newfound respect for herself. For many, this realization arrives quietly, like the turning of a page. You begin to sense how finite your days truly are. Each moment you spend is one you can never get back. Suddenly, the question isn't, how can I fit everything in? But, what is truly worth my time? This isn't selfishness. It's a gentle awakening to the truth that your hours are precious, and how you spend them shapes not just your days, but your spirit. You may notice you're less willing to sit through endless small talk or revisit the same old arguments. The patience you once had for gossip or trivial complaints seems to have vanished. You're less inclined to travel long distances for events that no longer excite you, or to stretch yourself thin just to keep others happy. Instead, you find yourself choosing the company of people who fill your cup, activities that bring you comfort or delight, and quiet moments that let your mind wander where it wants to go. This time revaluation doesn't mean you love others less or have grown cold. If anything, it means you value the people and moments you do choose even more deeply. There is a richness in sitting down with an old friend for an hour of honest conversation, or spending an afternoon tending to your garden, or simply allowing yourself the luxury of doing nothing at all. Each moment is savored because you know, in a way you never fully understood before, that time is not guaranteed. It is a gift that must be cherished and protected. As you honor this new understanding, you might face some gentle pushback from those around you. Family may wonder why you no longer host every holiday or why you decline invitations more often than before. Friends might miss your regular visits or wonder if something is wrong. But deep down, you know the truth. You are learning to live by your rhythm, guided by what brings you peace and purpose. There is a quiet courage in saying, "I'd rather stay home today," or "That trip feels too much for me right now." There's honesty in acknowledging that some things no longer bring you joy, and wisdom in choosing activities that nourish your soul. The freedom to spend your time as you wish is a hard-earned treasure, and you owe it to yourself to spend it well. Sometimes, this means rediscovering old passions or finally permitting yourself to pursue something new. You might pick up a paintbrush, start writing poetry, join a local club, or spend your afternoons with a stack of books you've always wanted to read. You might choose to travel, or you might choose to simply watch the sunset from your porch each night. The point is, the choice is yours to make, without apology or explanation. And in this space of self-chosen time, something beautiful happens. You start to notice the small pleasures that once slipped by unnoticed, the taste of fresh strawberries, the sound of rain on the window, the warmth of your favorite sweater. The days may be quieter, but they are richer. The hours are fewer, but they matter more. Time revaluation is not about counting down the days. It's about making the days count. It's about saying yes to what lights you up, and no to what dims your spark. It's about filling your calendar not with obligations, but with meaning. So, if you find yourself pulling back from social visits or declining invitations more often, trust that gentle instinct. You are not fading away. You are stepping into a new, wiser season of life. You are curating your days like an artist, choosing only the colors and textures that bring your heart peace. After 70, every moment is a little more sacred, every memory a little more golden. And you, perhaps for the first time, have the right and the wisdom to shape your time into the life you truly want. Reason 3. Emotional drain. There's a truth that quietly seeps into your bones as you move through the later chapters of life. A realization that has nothing to do with the aches of the body but everything to do with the burdens of the heart. Emotional drain is not a phrase most people would have used in their younger days, but by the time you've weathered decades of relationships and obligations, it becomes all too familiar. A silent weight you carry after certain visits, a subtle exhaustion that no amount of sleep can cure. 4 years, maybe most of your life, you may have chalked up your tiredness after family gatherings or community events to physical fatigue. It's only natural, you thought, to feel spent after an evening of cooking, hosting, or even just sitting in a room full of voices and stories. But as the years pass and your body signals its limits, you begin to notice a different kind of tiredness, the sort that lingers in your mind, that drains your spirit more than your muscles. Perhaps it creeps in quietly after a Sunday spent with relatives, when the laughter around the table fades and you find yourself staring out the window, oddly hollow inside. Maybe you realize it after a phone call with an old friend who spends the whole time venting about her problems, never once asking about yours. Or maybe it hits you as you sit in the middle of a bustling room, nodding at conversations that swirl around you but never really touch you. This is not the tiredness that follows a productive day in the garden or a long walk by the river. This is the weariness that comes from giving too much of yourself and receiving little or nothing back. You start to notice patterns. The same people, the same topics, the same sense of obligation, week after week. You find yourself nodding and smiling, playing your part in the endless loop of small talk and old stories. You listen to the same complaints, the same worries, the same arguments that never seem to resolve. When you were younger, perhaps you had the patience for it, believing that being there was what mattered most. But with age, your tolerance for emotional clutter wears thin, and what once felt like a connection now feels like performance. This is the emotional drain that comes from relationships and routines that have lost their meaning. It's not about disliking people or turning cold. It's often those you care about most who can leave you feeling the most empty, simply because the exchange is no longer mutual. You offer your listening ear, your patience, your empathy, but what comes back rarely fills the space you've opened in your heart. It's as if you're pouring water into a bucket with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you give, you never feel full. Harold, a 74-year-old widower from Ohio, knows this feeling well. For decades, he was the glue that held his family together, never missing a single birthday or holiday gathering. Every Saturday, he made the drive across town to see his brother and their extended family. At first, these visits were a source of pride and joy. But over time, Harold began to notice how invisible he felt in the crowd. His stories were brushed aside, his thoughts rarely sought. The conversations grew louder but somehow emptier, each person more interested in their updates or grievances than in genuinely connecting. He would return home, not invigorated but depleted, his mind swirling with unfinished thoughts and a quiet sadness that took hours, sometimes days, to shake off. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, but slowly Harold realized he was dreading those visits more than he looked forward to them. He started finding reasons to skip, spending his Saturdays in the garden instead, digging in the earth and breathing in the scent of tomato leaves and fresh soil. It was there, hands deep in the dirt, that he finally felt seen, not by others, but by himself. The quiet was a balm. The birdsong and rustle of the breeze asked nothing of him, expected nothing. And slowly, as the seasons turned, he found himself lighter, more whole, as if a pressure he hadn't even noticed was finally lifting. Emotional drain, you see, isn't always obvious to others. Friends and family may wonder why you're less available, why your phone calls are shorter, or why your visits are less frequent. Some might even accuse you of growing distant or losing your spark. But deep down, you know that you're not withdrawing out of bitterness. You're reclaiming the energy you once gave away too freely. You've outgrown the need to perform for others, to pretend that every gathering nourishes you when in truth, some only leave you feeling emptier. Psychologists call this emotional selectivity, the natural shift that happens as people age. We become more selective, more careful with our energy and our time, investing it in the relationships and moments that feel genuine and restorative. It's not about isolating yourself, but about choosing depth over frequency, quality over quantity. You realize that one heartfelt conversation with an old friend, or even a quiet afternoon in your own company, can be more fulfilling than a dozen noisy parties. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Of course, not everyone will understand. You may feel pressure to keep showing up, to continue traditions for the sake of harmony. But as you practice this new way of being, you learn that solitude isn't loneliness. It's a gift. It gives you space to recharge, to reflect, and to listen to the gentle wisdom that has taken root inside you. The world may not change. There will always be people who drain your spirit, always be gatherings that feel more like obligations than joys. But you change. You learn to listen to your inner signals, to honor the fatigue that settles not just in your bones but in your soul. You stop apologizing for needing quiet, for needing time alone, for choosing peace over performance. In this season of life, emotional drain becomes a teacher. It shows you where to draw your boundaries, where to invest your precious reserves of attention and care. It permits you to step back, to say no, to let go of relationships that no longer serve you. And in doing so, you make space for the things and the people that fill you up, that bring a sense of comfort and meaning, that remind you of who you truly are. If you find yourself more tired after certain visits or more at ease in your own quiet space, trust that instinct. It's your heart's way of asking for protection, for nourishment. The emotional drain you feel isn't a flaw, it's wisdom. It's the call to spend what you have left not on the noise of the world, but on the things that truly matter to you. Reason 4. Physical energy. There's a kind of honesty that settles into your bones as you grow older, a truth that becomes impossible to ignore every time you stand up from your favorite chair or take those first few steps out of bed in the morning. The body, once so reliable, has its quiet way of reminding you that it has limits, and after 70, those reminders become more persistent. Suddenly, what used to be simple, an afternoon drive, a walk through the grocery store, or even a short visit to a friend's house, can feel like planning a cross-country journey. For so many years, physical energy was something you hardly noticed. You were always on the go, juggling work, raising kids, keeping up the house, and rushing from one event to another without giving it much thought. Even retirement, at first, might have seemed full of endless possibilities. Traveling, volunteering, visiting family and old friends whenever you pleased. But with time, the reality of aging settles in with a quiet dignity, asking you to respect your body's need for rest in a way you never had to before. It starts with little things. Maybe you notice that a quick run to the pharmacy now leaves you needing to catch your breath, or that your legs feel heavy after standing in the kitchen for an hour. You plan your days more carefully, thinking about how much you can realistically do before fatigue catches up. Sometimes, just getting ready to go out, a shower, picking out clothes, gathering your things, feels like it uses up half the energy you have for the day. You find yourself looking at invitations with a different eye, weighing the effort of getting there, sitting through a long meal, and then making the trip home. The cost, you realize, is no longer just time. It's energy, and you don't have as much to spare as you once did. This shift can be hard to explain to others. Family and friends, especially those younger than you, may not understand why you decline a dinner or a gathering you once would have looked forward to. They might say, "But it's only for a few hours," not realizing that a few hours out can leave you exhausted for the rest of the day, or even the next. Sometimes, it isn't the company you're avoiding, but the tiredness you know will linger long after you're back home. Barbara, a spry and social 78-year-old from Minnesota, was always the life of the party. For years, she attended weekly coffee meetups with friends, never missing a single one. But in recent times, she found herself hesitating as the day approached. Just the idea of getting in the car, driving across town, finding a parking spot, and then navigating the crowded coffee shop, often sitting on hard, uncomfortable benches, felt overwhelming. One afternoon, after struggling to keep up with conversation and feeling her body ache from a long sit, Barbara quietly told her friends she wouldn't be joining them every week anymore. One friend protested, "But we miss you." Barbara replied with a gentle honesty, "I miss myself too, especially when I overdo it." That phrase held more truth than most realized. After 70, energy isn't something you can waste or ignore. The body keeps score in ways it never did before. A single late night can upset your sleep for days. An afternoon in the sun can leave you drained long after everyone else has gone home smiling. Even small outings require planning. Where will you sit? Is there a bathroom nearby? How many stairs are there to climb? Will there be a place to rest your feet, a moment for quiet if you need it? These considerations are not signs of weakness. They are, in fact, a kind of wisdom, an embodied understanding that your energy is precious and must be protected. You begin to view your physical stamina the way you once viewed your bank account. Something to budget carefully, spent only on things that truly matter or bring you joy. And if that means saying no to a few invitations, so be it. Sometimes, the hardest part is not the fatigue itself, but the guilt that comes with it. You might worry about disappointing your children or about missing out on moments with grandkids and friends. You remember what it was like to be the one always in motion, and you wish, just for a day, you could return to that effortless energy. But age has a way of teaching acceptance, the gentle art of knowing what you can do and forgiving yourself for the things you can't. This is not about giving up on life. If anything, it's about choosing life on your terms. Maybe now you prefer a quiet morning on the porch, sipping coffee and watching birds at the feeder, over a long afternoon in someone else's living room. Maybe you find joy in short, meaningful visits rather than day-long adventures. You learn to savor what you can do, and let go of what leaves you depleted. This new relationship with your body isn't always easy, but it is honest and real. You listen more closely to the signals it sends, the ache in your knees, the tightness in your back, the way your hands tremble after a long day. You respect those signals. You rest when you need to. You say no when your body quietly insists you must. There is a kind of dignity in this self-care, a wisdom that younger people may not fully understand but which feels like freedom once you accept it. The world may expect you to keep up, to show up, to act your age. But only you know what your age feels like inside your skin. Only you can decide how best to spend your energy and how to honor the body that has carried you through so much. And so, if you find yourself choosing rest over social obligation, comfort over appearance, or peace over activity, know that you are not alone. Know that you are not letting anyone down by listening to the quiet wisdom of your own body. This is not laziness. It's a kind of strength, a living grace. It is the courage to say, I've earned my rest, and I choose to use my energy where it matters most. Physical energy, after all, is not infinite. It is a treasure, one to be cherished, guarded, and spent with care. In this season of life, honoring your body's limits is not just wise, it is an act of love. For yourself, for your well-being, and for those moments that still bring you joy. Reason 5. Emotional economy. Something remarkable happens when you reach a certain age, often around 70, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. You start to view your emotional energy as something tangible, almost like money in the bank. Each encounter, each conversation, each relationship is a transaction, and the older you get, the more careful you become with how you spend what you have left. This is the heart of emotional economy. Realizing your feelings, attention, and care are precious, and choosing to invest them where you see true returns. This shift doesn't happen overnight. For decades, many of us gave freely of ourselves, often without a second thought. We listened to friends' troubles, mended family rifts, forgave harsh words, and put up with being misunderstood. We smiled through disagreements, kept quiet to avoid arguments, and dutifully attended gatherings even when our hearts felt heavy. It was just what you did, especially if you were raised in a time when harmony was more valued than honesty, when keeping the peace meant sacrificing your comfort for the good of the group. But time changes things. Eventually, you realize that your emotional reserves don't refill as quickly as they once did. The patience that used to be bottomless now has a very clear bottom. After too many years of feeling agitated, invisible, or unappreciated, something in you wakes up. You begin to notice the people and situations that consistently leave you drained, not lifted. You recognize the friends who only call to complain, the relatives who always find a way to criticize, or the neighbors who seem to thrive on stirring up old grievances. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Walter, for instance, was 82 when he finally realized how expensive his Sunday phone calls with his son had become, not in dollars, but in the energy they cost him. Every conversation seemed to end with tension or a subtle insult. His son never asked about Walter's life, never lingered for a genuine chat. Instead, he rushed through the call, making pointed remarks about Walter's choices, and hung up as soon as politeness allowed. For years, Walter called anyway, believing it was his duty as a father. But one afternoon, after hanging up with a heavy heart yet again, Walter paused. "This isn't love," he thought. "This is habit. This is a duty. And it's wearing me out." Slowly, Walter decided to stop making those calls. Not to punish his son, but to protect himself. He noticed, almost immediately, that he felt lighter. Instead of spending the rest of his Sunday ruminating on what he could have said or done differently, he put his energy into talking with his neighbor about crossword puzzles and jazz music. It was a small shift, but it made all the difference. Walter had started to practice emotional economy. Emotional economy means you no longer throw your feelings away on people or situations that leave you empty or upset. You invest in what brings you joy, comfort, or real connection. It's not about cutting people off or holding grudges. It's about letting go of the need to win approval or to mend relationships that are beyond repair. You begin to realize you don't have to answer every phone call, attend every argument, or explain yourself to people who never understood you in the first place. There is a certain peace that comes from this clarity. Instead of anxiously chasing after those who never call back, you put your energy into the relationships that feel mutual, where respect, warmth, and encouragement flow both ways. You weed out the toxic, the critical, the consistently negative, and in doing so, you make space for new joy to grow. This can look like spending more time with an old friend who makes you laugh, volunteering for a cause that stirs your heart, or simply enjoying your own company on a quiet afternoon. You learn, sometimes for the first time, that your happiness isn't something you owe to anyone else. It's something you earn and protect. This transition isn't always easy. There might be guilt in the beginning. After all, You spent so many years being the reliable one, the peacekeeper, the person everyone could lean on. Family members may not understand your boundaries at first. Some friends may drift away when you stop playing the role you always played. But with time, you realize that you are not responsible for other people's comfort at the expense of your well-being. You are allowed, no obligated to, guard your heart as carefully as you once guarded your home or your savings. Think of your emotional economy as a garden. For years, you may have let weeds grow unchecked, resentment, exhaustion, self-doubt, because you didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But now, with each passing season, you become a wiser gardener. You prune back what chokes out the good. You nourish what's healthy. You let sunlight reach the parts of yourself that have too long been in shadow. The harvest is a quieter, deeper happiness than you ever thought possible. This isn't about becoming hard or uncaring. If anything, it's about becoming more loving, first and foremost, to yourself. When you protect your peace, you become a better friend, a more attentive listener, and a more genuine companion. You stop needing to prove yourself, stop trying to earn love or acceptance. Instead, you show up as your truest self, and those who appreciate you will rise to meet you. Of course, not everyone will understand this change. Some will call you distant, accuse you of letting yourself go, or losing your spark. But those who love you, really love you, will notice the new lightness in your step, the contentment in your eyes. They will see you investing your time, your words, your heart where it matters most. And you, in turn, will find that your days are less filled with drama and more with meaning. So if you find yourself, after 70, quietly stepping back from old obligations, know this: you are not alone, and you are not wrong. Emotional economy is a gift you give yourself, a declaration that your feelings are valuable, your time is limited, and your peace is worth defending. In the end, you discover that protecting your emotional energy isn't selfish. It's survival. It's wisdom. And it's the path to a life that finally, truly, feels like your own. Reason 6. Self-respect awakening. There comes a moment in life, often quietly but unmistakably, when everything shifts inside you. It's not marked by fanfare or a grand event, but by a deep, steady knowing, a self-respect awakening. For many, this moment arrives sometime after 70, when the years of giving, accommodating, and seeking approval reach a turning point. Suddenly, you realize that the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself, and that honoring your dignity is not just necessary, it's non-negotiable. For decades, many of us were taught that kindness means compliance, that love means sacrifice, and that keeping the peace means putting our own needs last. We shrank ourselves in subtle ways, softening our opinions, downplaying our achievements, saying yes when we wanted to say no, all to make others more comfortable. We believed that our worth was measured by how much we could do for others, how agreeable and dependable we were. And in many ways, that served us well. It helped build families, communities, and lasting friendships. But as the years pass, a quiet rebellion stirs. It's not loud or angry, but firm and clear. You begin to recognize the cost of living your life as an afterthought, the tiredness that comes not just from age, but from putting yourself last for too long. You start to feel the weight of being overlooked, dismissed, or taken for granted. Maybe it was a family event where your presence was expected, but your voice was ignored. Maybe it was a conversation where your feelings were brushed aside, or a moment when you realized you were the only one bending to keep the peace. And then, one day, something changes. The need to be liked no longer feels urgent. The fear of disappointing others begins to lose its grip. Instead, a deeper instinct takes hold. The instinct to protect your dignity, to stand firmly in your worth, and to set boundaries that honor who you are. This is the self-respect awakening. Take Marilyn, a vibrant 76-year-old woman who spent most of her life as the family's go-to person. The one everyone called when help was needed, whether it was babysitting grandchildren, organizing holidays, or lending money to relatives. Marilyn was proud to be reliable, to be the one who kept the family connected. But over time, she noticed how tired she became, how little time she had for herself, and how her health began to suffer under the weight of constant giving. 1 year ago, Marilyn made a decision that surprised her family. She politely declined the big family reunion, choosing instead to spend a quiet weekend at a lake cabin alone. When her daughter expressed shock, saying, "Mom, everyone's counting on you," Marilyn smiled and replied gently, "For once, I'm counting on me." That weekend was more than a break. It was a declaration. It changed her relationship with her family, and more importantly, it changed how she treated herself. This self-respect awakening is not about shutting people out or becoming cold. It's about showing others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. When you stop begging for scraps of attention or approval, people either rise to meet you or fall away, and either outcome is a win because you are no longer depending on others to define your worth. You begin to say no to invitations that feel more like obligations. You stop entertaining conversations that drain your spirit. You walk away from relationships where you are treated like a backup plan or an afterthought. And in doing so, you reclaim your time, your energy, and your peace. It's a transformation that often surprises those around you, especially those used to the old you who always said yes. But the new you, stronger, clearer, more grounded, is someone who has earned the right to set boundaries without guilt. You've lived long enough to know what you deserve, and you carry that knowledge with quiet power. This awakening can come with challenges. You may face pushback or confusion from friends and family who don't understand why you're changing. Some may feel hurt or abandoned. But true self-respect means staying true to yourself even when it's hard. It means honoring your needs and feelings with the same kindness you once reserved for others. In this season of life, peace becomes more important than popularity. Authenticity replaces the need for approval, and there is a profound freedom in no longer shrinking to fit into others' expectations. You learn to stand tall in your truth, to speak up for yourself, and to cherish your own company. And what a gift that is, to finally befriend yourself with the kindness, patience, and respect you've long given away. To walk through the world with the quiet confidence that you are enough, just as you are. So if you find yourself setting new boundaries, declining old obligations, or choosing solitude over exhausting social demands, know this: you are not being selfish. You are awakening to a deeper respect for yourself. You are stepping into a truer, wiser, and more loving version of who you have always been. And that, perhaps more than anything, is the greatest gift of growing older, the chance to finally honor yourself as the remarkable person you are. Reaching the age of 70 and beyond often brings a profound shift in how we see ourselves and the world around us. If you found yourself pulling back from social visits, choosing quiet mornings over noisy gatherings, or wondering why your circle seems smaller than it used to be, know that you are not alone, and more importantly, you are not broken. What you're experiencing is a beautiful transformation, a step toward a wiser, more authentic version of yourself. Aging strips away the noise, the obligations, and the expectations that no longer serve us, revealing what truly matters. It's a chance to protect your peace, to choose depth over drama, honesty over pretense, and self-care over sacrifice. This is not about giving up, but growing up gracefully. It's about honoring the years you've lived, the lessons you've learned, and the self-respect you deserve. As you embrace this new chapter, remember that it's okay to say no, to set boundaries, and to invest your time and energy only where it feels right. Your worth isn't measured by how often you show up for others, but by how well you show up for yourself. And in this space of self-love and clarity, you'll find a freedom and peace unlike any other. I'd love to hear from you. What is one thing you've learned from this journey that you plan to bring into your life? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more meaningful content to inspire and uplift you. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video.